700 miles per hour, faster than a jet, yet pinned to the ground. LA to San Francisco in 30 minutes. For a decade, this wasn't just a dream. It was the promised future of human movement. But look at it now. Today, that $450 million dream is being sold for scrap. The track of the future is a rusting pipe in the dirt. How did the most hyped startup of the century vanish? It ignited in 2013 with an Elon Musk whitepaper. He called it the fifth mode of transport, a vacuum-sealed bullet designed to disrupt high-speed rail before it ever broke ground. The scent of disruption was hit. Billionaires and VCs poured in $500 million, terrified of missing the next Tesla. They funded the tube because they were desperate to own the future. But while the PR reels showed a utopia, the company was decaying. Behind the glass walls, Hyperloop One was being eaten alive by power struggles and devastating lawsuits. The marketing promised supersonic speeds. The reality? Their first human test barely topped 100 miles per hour. That's slower than a commuter train and infinitely more expensive. Meet the architects, Josh Giegel and Brogan BamBrogan. SpaceX alumni and elite engineers who believed they could bend physics to their will. They had the pedigree, the passion, and the investors' ears. The honeymoon ended in 2016. Internal friction turned dark when BamBrogan found a hangman's noose left on his office chair, a chilling sign that the culture had turned toxic. Lawsuits soon exposed a mess of mismanagement, allegations of nepotism and pay-to-play schemes. The capital wasn't going into engineering, it was bleeding out through legal fees and executive greed. Sensing a disaster, Richard Branson arrived to save the brand. Rebranded as Virgin Hyperloop, the company gained global prestige. The celebrity endorsement worked, masking the rot for just a little longer. Then came DP World, the Dubai logistics titan. They didn't just see a train, they saw a way to move cargo across the desert in minutes. The Hyperloop became the crown jewel of Middle Eastern tech ambition. The vision went global, connecting cities from the UAE to Europe. Governments were sold a world where distance was irrelevant, where every city was just a suburb of the next. But while salesmen flew in private jets, engineers hit a wall of physics. On the screens, the math didn't add up. The vacuum wasn't holding, and the dream was leaking air. It was the peak of move fast and break things. In Silicon Valley, a polished pitch deck was worth more than a working machine. They were selling the feeling of the future, not the function. By 2017, the world was watching. With flashbulbs popping at the desert test track, the future felt like it had finally arrived. No one wanted to admit the tube was empty. Physics is a cruel auditor. Maintaining a near-perfect vacuum over hundreds of miles is an engineering nightmare. If the pressure fails, the atmosphere rushes in with the force of an explosion. At 700 miles per hour, there is no margin for error. One microscopic crack would hit the pod like a bomb. There are no fender benders in a vacuum. To turn at those speeds without killing the passengers, the curves would need to be miles long. Otherwise, the G-force would cause riders to black out. It wasn't a commute. It was a centrifuge. The final nail was the cost. Estimates ballooned to $100 million per mile. It was no longer a cheap alternative. It was the most expensive infrastructure project in history. While Hyperloop burned cash on prototypes, traditional high-speed rail was already moving millions safely. The competition was real and proven. The tube was just a render. The energy math was just as grim. Keeping a massive tube devoid of air requires a constant astronomical draw of electricity. The green promise faded under the weight of the power bill. Every station needed complex airlocks to move people without losing the vacuum. Each one added time to the trip and created 1,000 new points of mechanical failure. Maintenance was a constant battle. Every inch of the tube required daily inspection for stress fractures. Costs were projected to be 10 times higher than conventional rail. The burn rate was staggering, millions vanishing every month. Yet after years of work, the physical prototype was still moving at a crawl compared to the pitch deck promises. By 2021, the cracks were everywhere. Richard Branson began to distance himself from the project. The smiles for the cameras were getting tighter, and the updates were getting fewer. Wall Street finally woke up. They realized that tech was a bottomless sinkhole. The era of easy moonshot money ended as investors demanded results over digital animations. The exit was quiet but definitive. Richard Branson pulled his name, his brand, and his support from the project. The Virgin era was over, leaving the company without its most famous advocate and its most recognizable identity. In a desperate pivot, they fired half the staff and abandoned human travel. They switched to cargo, a tactical retreat to avoid the impossible safety standards of carrying people. But the cargo market didn't want a billion-dollar tube either. Shipping is slow because it's cheap. No one needs to move sneakers at Mach 1 for a 5,000% markup. DP World moved in. As the primary creditor, they seized the board, steering the company not toward a launch, but toward a final liquidation of the original vision. The dreams of the founders were literally being shredded. Engineers were replaced by liquidation specialists, tasked with salvaging what was left of the wreckage. One by one, the dots on the map blinked out. Routes from California to Abu Dhabi were quietly canceled. The global network was shrinking back into the desert sand. The lights in the LA headquarters dimmed. The workspace that once buzzed with aerospace experts was cleared out. A for-lease sign became the company's final milestone. Hyperloop One was out of time and out of cash. The countdown to 2024 wasn't a celebration of the future. It was a countdown to the company's final breath. The physical tubes were left to sit in the Nevada sun. Without constant maintenance, the track of the future succumbed to the oldest enemy of engineering, rust. It's now a $450 million monument to hubris, a ghost track where the only thing moving at high speed is the wind blowing through hollow pipes. The digital assets followed. Years of simulations and designs were moved to cold storage or deleted. The collective knowledge of hundreds of experts was simply boxed away. The pods that were supposed to revolutionize travel now sit in storage, covered in dust. They are no longer vehicles. They are museum pieces for a future that never arrived. The true cost was human. In December 2023, while others prepared for the holidays, 200 employees were told the dream was officially dead. On New Year's Eve, the final staff packed their bags. There were no goodbye parties, just the sound of monitors clicking off for the last time. Then came the auction. The machinery, tubes, and pods were sold for pennies on the dollar to clear the books. The future was sold for scrap. Intellectual property was the last to go. DP World seized the patents and moved the tech secrets to Dubai. The company was stripped for parts, its DNA absorbed by a logistics giant. Innovation requires reality. When hype outpaces physics, the reflection of the future eventually fades into the wasteland. While Hyperloop failed, the rest of the world didn't wait. High-speed rail continued to evolve, moving millions daily with technology that actually works. The fifth mode remains a fantasy for those still waiting at rainy bus stops. We chased a supersonic tube while our actual roads and bridges continued to crumble. $450 million later, we have a few brochures and a mountain of legal filings. Hyperloop One is now just a cautionary footnote in tech history. It's now a business school case study in overpromising, a warning that you cannot disrupt the laws of physics with a marketing budget. In the end, nature wins. It is reclaiming the steel and the sand. What hubris built, time will erase, leaving only an expensive lesson behind. The story of Hyperloop One is a warning. It tells us that the hardest part of the future isn't the idea, it's the unglamorous work of making it real. There is irony in our obsession with the new. We chase a shimmering future to avoid the difficult, boring work of fixing the systems we already have. Silicon Valley says move fast and break things. But in infrastructure, breaking things just leaves you with a mess. Sometimes, the slow path is the only one that leads home. Hyperloop One failed because the vision was built on deception and ego. The drawers closed. The dream is on ice. The era of the megaflop isn't over. What's the next big tech disaster? Let us know your theories in the comments. Take care and see you soon.